The story I'm going to read is The Diary of Sarah Higgins. Sarah Higgins lived in Noosa, New Zealand, and had come out from England in 1841. So she was one of the first English people that came out in one of the first boats. So I'll read you her diary. My father's name was Stephen Sharp, and he had a nice little home in the county of Wiltshire, Kent, 5 miles from the seaport of Dover, where he married and had a family of 5 children, 3 boys and 2 girls, myself being the youngest. My mother died when I was a baby. Some time after, my father got married again, and his second wife died 12 months after. Baby also. His mother and father came and lived with us. I got very fond of my grandmother. She often used to tell me that I was her right hand. Then I had to go to school. There I learned sewing and reading, but I did not stay long enough to learn to write, which was not taught till later. I could make all my undergarments when I was 12 years old. Well, there was a great craze for people to come to New Zealand. My father tried to get a ticket but could not. The company that was sending them out said he could not go because he had not a wife. The doctor applied for a ticket for my sister, for she had been a long time ill. He said it was the only thing that would save her, if she could go for a long voyage. So they gave father a ticket. He sold his home, went to London, down to Deptford, and got a passage on the ship Bolton. We sailed from Deptford and went down the English Channel to Dover, where we had the last sight of the old motherland. When we left Dover and the White Cliffs, there was a lot of hurrahing and goodbyes. So that was the last sight of old England. We soon got out in the open sea, where we had a nice time until we got to the Bay of Biscay, where we had a fearful gale. The sea ran mountains high. It commenced on New Year's night and kept on for 3 days and nights. We were all battered down below. It broke the bulwarks of one side of the ship. Timber in the longboat and the pigs on top of the cook's galley all went overboard. The captain's wife was washed out of her cabin 3 times. They thought she was dead. It was a terrible time. There was crying and screaming and praying. Our clothes were washed down below. Some of us did not have any clean ones to put on until they were brought up. 2 days later, my dear sister had died 2 months after leaving England, before we had this awful gale. My sister was 21 and I was 12 years old. It was a sorry time for my father and myself. There were not many dry eyes that day. The sea did not save her, she was buried in it. When the gale got a little calmer, they let us up on deck, but oh, what a sight it was. I could never forget it. One man was washed overboard, but he was pulled back again with the next wave. Another had his arm broken. The waves kept washing the men from their pumps. The vessel was turning over with the weight of the boats, pigs and timber hanging onto the mast. We had a black man for a cook. He could use the axe. He said, "Captain, shall I do anything?" Captain said, "For God's sake, do anything you can." He jumped up and chopped the chains and let all the mast and the timber go overboard. Oh dear, what a crash it was. We huddled in one another's arms. But when all that was gone, then the ship righted up again and the captain said we were saved. It was a sight to see, like a tree with the top gone. The big masts were broken in 2, the sails were gone. Nearly everything on the top deck was gone. The ship had been a man of war. She was fitted up for an immigrant ship. If she had not been very strong, she would not have withstood this. There was no timber to repair her. The captain did not know how to keep us safe, but God sent help in time of need, for we saw another vessel coming. The captain hoisted his flag and showed his colours. but he did not like to let them know that we were in distress. But she was a French vessel that came up to us and stayed by our side for 3 days, gave timber and help to repair our ship and to keep it safe until we could get to port. The cabin man was very nice. He had found out that his brother was the mate on board the other ship. They had not seen each other for 9 years. What a jollification they had, and it helped us to forget our terrible trouble for a while. After all the storm, was now nice and calm. We got to Wellington, New Zealand. There we stopped for 14 days and got fitted up to go to Nelson, New Zealand. Our journey of 5 months on the ship was over. When we reached Nelson Harbour, we anchored in the strait for our time. We couldn't get in because our ship was a big heavy vessel and Fifeshire was on the Rock, which was the other ship that had come before. So the Rock was called Fifeshire after that. The harbour was so small we had to land in little boats and could not get our things out of our ship for 2 days. Our captain's name was Bolton, the same as our ship's name. The cook left the ship and stayed in Nelson. The captain got up a subscription amongst the shipmates and gave him a present for being such a brave man. There were 350 on our ship. When we were put ashore, there were a lot of men who had come in before us. They were up the hills and going around the beach trying to make a road. My father asked them, "Where are the barracks?" "For the people." They told him, "Go over the hill and down Washington Valley." We had to go through some flax and a lot of mud to where the church is now on Church Hill, and that's where the building was that we had to go to. My father asked if there was room for us, and they said that it was so full of women and children. There were a lot of little huts made of rush and flax. Father made a bed, with the help of my brothers, out of fern, and we had 2 blankets lent us. We had not got over the things from our ship yet. My father took me in his arms. We laid down with the fern and a blanket over and under. We did that for 2 nights. My 2 brothers also kept the fire going and took it in turns to beat the rats away. Such a lot of great wild rats, some of them, they were biting people. Well, that was our first experience in Nelson. There was a boarded building to be put in the goods for our goods and provisions. Barrels of pork, flour, sugar, tea, biscuits and oil that would leave from other ships that had come. Then it was weighed out with a little for every family. They called this our rations. We had this as long as vessels kept coming in. The people had to begin to build little huts to live in with flax and rushes. They got our things from our ship. They brought them to us on a little cart on a bullock dray. And then the men did all the carting. There were no roads, it was just flax and mud. There were no houses, just little huts dotted all over. It was a funny little town in those days. We had to make the best of it. My brother George went with Mr. Songer. He was Captain Wakefield's workman. The captain was killed in the Wairau massacre. Mr. Songer was the first white man to put the English flag up on the Port Hills. So this is taken from the story Sarah Higgins' diary. I'll just show you. It's like the old writing. It makes it interesting to read. So if you'd like to read that one, it is available from National Library. And you can also find it in this book. So you have it.